Alright, hello everyone. Today we are going to be doing a tier list ranking video, and I am going to be ranking all of the WrestleMania main event matches. Now, obviously, the WrestleMania main event is the biggest and most important match every year in WWE, and we have just come off WrestleMania 40, so now is a good time to do it, now that we've got two more matches to add. So I have the tiers here. I've got the GOATs, the greatest of all time. We've got legendary, got great, good, mediocre, bad, terrible, and then the worst. And we're going to go through all 45 main events from all 40 WrestleManias, including night one of the last 5 Manias. And we're going to start from the bottom at the worst and make our way up to the GOATs at the top. These are my takes, so bear that in mind. If you have any of your own takes, you can post them in the comments, or even better, make your own video. The worst at the bottom at number 45. We will start with WrestleMania 27. We have The Miz versus John Cena for the WWE title. This match fucking sucks ass. It has The Miz as WWE champion, and at the time he was failing in the role. This is a weak match in ring as well. It's just these two guys just didn't work particularly well together. The match itself just doesn't flow right. The Miz gets concussed. There's a double count out, a restart via the anonymous Raw general manager, with The Rock getting involved. The ending of the match feels like a teaser trailer for the next year, and the whole thing just is a massive waste of time, an insult to those who paid money to watch it, or to go there especially and see it. And yeah, it just felt very undeserving of the WrestleMania main event. The execution was poor, and the outcome was just a mess. It felt like a Raw main event. It didn't feel like a WrestleMania main event, and even in saying that, the match itself was very, very disappointing, and it just kind of ended one of the, in my opinion, the worst WrestleMania events, that being 27, off on a very sour note. It really is, for me, probably the worst Mania main event. I think it's also more personal for me because I actually watched this live, so I actually had to pay money to see this, as opposed to some of the older ones, which I was not alive for or just wasn't watching. But this one I have a personal, massive personal gripe with, so yeah. At the bottom, we have Cena versus Miz at Mania 27, and then at 44, we have what was supposed to be Bret versus Yokozuna at Mania 9, and then turned into Hulk Hogan versus Yokozuna at Mania 9. So Bret versus Yokozuna is not a terrible match, but it does go too short. Bret had plans for the match, and then Yokozuna got gassed, so they had to end it earlier than expected, which kind of messed up the psychology behind the salt finish. Had Yokozuna win, and then Hogan just comes out and cashes in his brother in the bank and just beats Yokozuna in a minute or less. And it's just kind of an embarrassing display of backstage politics. And as an end to a match, you could argue this is actually probably worse than 27, because it would be like if Rock came in and became the champion, considering what Hogan did. But I think the reason why I put this slightly higher, just a notch higher than 27, is because I think the actual meat of the match that Yokozuna and Bret had was slightly better than Miz versus Cena. It had a bit more cohesion to it. You know, it is a Bret Hart match, after all, whereas Miz versus Cena was just kind of nothing but shit. But you know, this one stunk as well. Definitely one of the worst. And I don't think fans will ever forgive Hogan for what he did. And he wouldn't even put over Bret at SummerSlam later in the year. Number 43, we have from WrestleMania 34. Where is it? Here it is. Brock Lesnar versus Roman Reigns. Another one that I had to watch live. Good fucking god, this match sucked so hard. This was a finisher fest, but not in a good way. Sometimes it can work in the right circumstance, but in this match, it didn't work at all. The fans didn't want to see either of these guys in this match. They didn't want to see Brock win, and they didn't want to see Reigns win. If Reigns had won, it would have finally ended the sort of the annoying saga of the company constantly trying to crown him and not crowning him because the fans were rejecting him. And then they just had Brock Lesnar win, so it kind of felt really pointless. It's just a bad match on pretty much every metric. The crowd really did not like it. They shit all over it, and even Brock himself, there's footage of him backstage after the match throwing the Universal title at Vince's face. He was so disappointed. So yeah, this was just pitiful, really pitiful match. And unfortunately, with Big Dog Roman Reigns, a lot of his matches at WrestleMania did not deliver. And continuing on that trend, we have number 42, which is from WrestleMania 32, Triple H versus Roman Reigns. Yeah, this was also dog shit, and it just kind of it went on for way too long, and it was at a end of a very long show. People were tired. No one wanted to see Roman win, but the outcome was inevitable. The only real highlight of this match that kind of maybe elevates it slightly above the other match that I just talked about is the moment where Stephanie McMahon gets speared. That actually was quite cool. In ring, it's not a disaster, but I think in terms of audience investment, that is where this match really falters, and that is where the match just... That is pretty much why it is, I think, considered one of the worst, and why I consider it one of the worst is just, regardless of what you do in the ring and the fans don't care, you're going to end up with a dead match, and that's exactly what this was. And also, the entrances were pretty cringe as well. So yeah, I was not happy at all. I felt very deflated at the end of Mania 32, which, in fact, I'd say, as a whole, 32 is one of the worst Manias ever, and this main event certainly did not help matters. And speaking of Roman Reigns at number 41, golly, it's 3 years in a row of pain. We had Roman Reigns versus The Undertaker at Mania 33. Again, another match where people just didn't care to see Reigns win, and even though we knew it was going to happen. This was pretty embarrassing from Undertaker. There was a lot of botches. And yeah, the match just had... It's certainly, I think, compared to the other two that I just talked about, this one certainly had a lot more heat going for it. But in ring, it was definitely the sloppiest. And it was just... You got the feeling that this was probably going to be Undertaker's last match, but because of how bad it went, Taker came back and stuck around for a bit longer. But yeah, that doesn't say that for the fact that this is one of the worst Mania main events. This is kind of the trifecta of Roman Reigns big dog main events that just sucked, and WWE booking Vince just couldn't grasp really what the fans wanted to see. He just gave 3 main events in a row of Reigns against these old guys. I mean, Brock's not terribly old, but it's just not what people wanted to see. And yeah, I mean, Reigns got a lot of heat coming out of this match, which is probably why I'd rank it slightly above, if I had to, the Triple H match and the Brock match, but it's still a terrible match. It's genuinely, it's rubbish. And speaking of terrible matches, we have another one, but this one's a bit of an older match. We have from WrestleMania 8, Hulk Hogan versus Sid Justice. Where do I start with this? Well, the fact that they didn't book Hogan versus Flair while they had Flair was a mistake. They gave us Savage versus Flair in the middle of the show, which in itself worked, but then you had Hogan versus Sid. Hogan's sort of temporary send-off because of the steroid trial. But Hogan and Sid are not compatible with each other, and the match was really below par, just not good in the ring at all. Ends on a DQ, Papa Shango misses his timing, and I guess the Ultimate Warrior comes out at the end. It is very much a non-match, and it being chosen as the main event was a huge mistake, and it was just a massive, anti-climax to WrestleMania. And yeah, there's not really anything good about this match, to be honest. It just kind of sucks all around. Maybe not quite as catastrophic in terms of implications as some of the other matches in the worst, but I still think there's enough that goes wrong with it to land it in this category. Yeah, I think these 5 matches are the dirt worst when it comes to Mania main events. They're the ones that really exemplify why sometimes these things just don't work. And a common denominator in a lot of these matches is either Roman Reigns or Hulk Hogan, so I don't know what that says about them or Vince's booking of them. But yeah, these 5 matches are disgustingly bad. So let's move on. We have from WrestleMania 25, Triple H versus Randy Orton. We're going to put this in terrible. This was so disappointing because this is one of the best builds to a Mania of all time. You had the famous segment of Randy Orton tying Triple H to the ropes and kissing Stephanie after a DDT, and then you also had him punting Vince. You had Triple H home invasion of Randy Orton. This was peak Viper. And the match stipulation meant that they couldn't go no holds barred, and this also had to follow Taker versus Shawn, which kind of killed all the hype for it. It just was a really mediocre, boring, stale match that was so disappointing because of how well the feud was built. And it just ultimately fell really flat. And it's such a shame what happened with this match. Yeah, it's genuinely really frustrating to see how they had gold in the palm of their hands and the WWE just fumbled it so hard by giving us mediocrity, if not worse, much worse actually, because of how good it could have been. So yeah, I put Triple H vs. Randy Orton in terrible at 39, and then at 38, we have one where I just fundamentally disagree with the decision to book this match, and I think a lot of people would agree with me. We have, from WrestleMania 29, The Rock versus John Cena 2, twice in a lifetime. I mean, that name in itself, the fact that the first match was advertised as once in a lifetime and they just decided to do it again, is just a massive fuck up. They should have had a triple threat with CM Punk involved. That would have been way better. So even in saying that, that was annoying. The hype for the match was certainly a lot less than the previous year, and they didn't really have a video package. They just sort of came out. The WWE title was on the line, but that didn't really change too much. And about halfway through the match, The Rock tore his abdomen, so they were very limited in what they could do. Yeah, it's maybe not the worst match ever, but I just personally think that this was just the wrong match. Just the wrong match to have as the main event of 29. It just kind of really soured a lot of people because it just felt like Vince had lied to us the previous year. And yeah, really pisses me off that this match took place. It should have just never happened. So yeah, let's move on to a match that makes me very sad because of the circumstances, and I am going to put it in terrible, unfortunately. We have Brock Lesnar versus Drew McIntyre from WrestleMania 36, Night 2. This was the COVID WrestleMania. It's a finisher fest for about 4 minutes, which in itself, not a big fan that they did it that way. Just kind of makes the match feel like a bit of a video game, really, and it's not executed in the right way. Like, if you want a good example of how to do a finisher fest that works, watch Seth Rollins vs. Drew McIntyre from Mania 40. I think that actually works a hell of a lot better. This one doesn't, and one of the biggest reasons is because there's no fans. It's just an empty warehouse, and it's just depressing to watch, to be honest. I can't enjoy it. This one, not so much of the fault of WWE, just kind of just the world fucking them over, but I can't reconcile how bad the atmosphere is by having no fans involved in the match. It just doesn't work. Just makes it fundamentally shit. Yeah, not very good. Then we move on to an Attitude Era match. We have the Fatal 4-Way match from WrestleMania 2000, WrestleMania 16, depending on how you want to label it. This is just overbooked. There's a McMahon in every corner. It should have just been The Rock vs. Triple H. I mean, the match from Backlash that year, a month later, is pretty much the real WrestleMania main event. That feels worthy. This doesn't. With having Mick Foley and Big Show involved, it's just too much. And Triple H won. Yeah, it's just a nasty, really messy, just not enjoyable match, and it just kind of does all the wrong things. And not really that appealing even from a wrestling standpoint. It just kind of just fucks around for a lot of the time. And yeah, it was just the wrong match. It should have been Triple H versus The Rock. Basically the exact match they had at Backlash should have been the main event of WrestleMania. And then after that, we have kind of tossing up which tier to put this one in. I think I'm going to put this one in bad, not terrible. But I could see an argument either way. The next choice, which is number 35, is from WrestleMania 13. We have The Undertaker versus Psycho Sid. This was originally going to be Brett versus Shawn, and then Shawn lost his smile. Shawn's at commentary, Brett gets involved. The crowd's really quiet for this match, and it is a bit of a generic dud. I don't think this is maybe as insulting as some of the other matches below it. But let's not get it twisted, it is a bad match. It is just so weak for a WrestleMania main event. It just doesn't feel like it's big enough to be in that spot. And yeah, the crowd was just so quiet. And Sid shits himself, which is hilarious. Unfortunately, Sid does not have a good track record for Mania main events. I could see why someone would probably put this in terrible and maybe swap it with the Fatal 4-Way, but I'm not sure. I don't think this match is quite as terrible as some people say, but it is definitely bad. It's just a very, very weak match. And then after that, we have from WrestleMania 7, we have Hulk Hogan versus Sergeant Slaughter. I mean, it's not... In-ring, it's pretty... If you're just talking about it from an in-ring perspective alone, it'd probably be a mediocre. What pushes this into bad is the story, just the Iraqi patriotism stuff. It just doesn't work. It's really cringy. And, you know, I consider WrestleMania 7 to be pretty underrated on the whole, because I think the undercard has a lot to offer, but the main event is definitely one of the lowest points of the show. And it just kind of feels like a step backwards with Hulk Hogan back in the main event again. The America vs. Iraq thing, it's just kind of tasteless. And also this Mania had very low attendance. It was just kind of like, I guess, signaled that WWE was losing, well, WWF, I guess, is losing a lot of its momentum in terms of mainstream appeal, and that was not a good sign. The match is just kind of bad, and that's, yeah, it's not very good. Just not very, it's very, like, forgettable, I'd say, overall. And Sergeant Slaughter was definitely past his prime in ring. Then we have number 33, which is from WrestleMania 2. We have Hulk Hogan versus King Kong Bundy in a steel cage. Just sort of thinking about where to put this one. I think I will... Oh. No, I think I'm going to put this in mediocre. It's not terrible. It is a 80s main event. It is two big boys crashing into each other. I think this is just kind of there. It's not terrible. It does come at the end of a very terrible WrestleMania event. But I think this match is not that bad. It's fine for what it is, but it's also not very good either. It's just kind of the serviceable super heavyweight showdown. And Hogan escapes the cage and wins, and it's just kind of like what you would expect from it, really. Not too bad, but also not very good either. Very average to below average, very sort of mediocre. I think that's kind of, yeah, I think I'm pretty confident with that. Number 32 is from WrestleMania 10. We have Bret versus Yokozuna. This was kind of like the apology match for the previous year. Bret coming in hurt after his match with Owen, and Yokozuna coming in gassed after his match with Luger. It's a great moment to crown Bret. The ending with Owen staring at Bret, with everyone holding up Bret, and the jealousy was great as a story. In ring, though, this is pretty poor. The whole finish of Yokozuna falling off the turnbuckle is really dumb. But I think the crowning thing of Bret saves it, really. The story they told of Bret throughout the show, and the fact that this is payback for WrestleMania 9, and how they screwed him over. I think that's really what really saves it in a lot of ways. But it's still very not one I would recommend for the in-ring quality for sure. It's a sluggish one. It's a sluggish match, and pretty short, I'd say. Then we have number 31, which is from WrestleMania 38 Night 2, is Brock versus Roman, unifying the titles. This one could have been a lot better. This one is a very mixed match. I think there are good things about it. This time, and unlike 34, the characters are in a better place with the Tribal Chief and with Farmer Brock. But because I think of Roman's injury from the Kimura lock, they had to end this a bit abruptly. Yeah, the short cutting of the match does hurt it. And also the fact that we'd seen Roman vs. Brock so many times before, I think fans were fatigued of it. But it's not a terrible match. It's just, it's problematic. It's a match with issues that hold it down. Then we have number 30, which is Lawrence Taylor versus Bam Bam Bigelow from WrestleMania 11. I think this match is better than it had any right to be, given that it's an NFL player in it. And on the celebrity match front, I'd actually say you could argue this belongs in the good category. But the reason why I can't in good conscience say this is a good match is because it shouldn't have been the main event of WrestleMania 11. It's just the wrong placing. It really should have been Diesel versus Shawn Michaels, and I think from a booking standpoint, that just really rankles me the wrong way. But WWE was in such a dire place in 1995 that they decided to just prioritize celebrity involvement. But a much better use of a celebrity is present in my number 29 pick, which is the first one from WrestleMania 1. You've got Hulk Hogan and Mr. T versus Roddy Piper and Paul Orndorff. I think this being the main event actually does work. As a match, it is a mess. It's not really a wrestling showcase. It's more of a celebrity, scramble, I guess you could say. But this has its fun value to it. And I think it works for what it's trying to do relatively well. I can't put it in good, though, because the wrestling itself just doesn't... It's just not up to standard. But as a spectacle, it works fine enough. And, I'm fine with this being the first main event of WrestleMania. I think 1985, I think this was kind of what they needed. But from a wrestling standpoint itself, it's not really what I would call a good match. Number 28, this one's kind of crushing because of who's involved, because I love both of these guys. But my number 28 is from WrestleMania 4. It is Randy Savage versus Ted DiBiase. I think Mania 4 is a really bad show. Overall, it has too many matches. None of the matches are good. This is probably the best thing on the show just because it's Randy Savage winning his first WWF title and overcoming the odds against the $1 Million Man. But it's by no means a match really to praise. I think this whole show was just booked into an oblivion by the way it was structured. And this main event comes off very mediocre and doesn't deliver in the way it really should. The only real, as I said, thing that I really like about it is that Savage gets to win the belt for the first time, but just as a match and as a show, as an ending to it, it's just so flat and mediocre as a wrestling contest in kayfabe. And yeah, it's not really that remarkable. Number 27, I think, this is tough between if I put it in mediocre or good. I think I'm still going to stick with mediocre for Triple H versus Batista at WrestleMania 21, which is my 27 choice. Because despite the fact that crowning Batista was definitely the right idea, the match itself is still not good enough. From an in-ring perspective, it is so average. It is such an average powerhouse TV match at the end of WrestleMania. And that really is the part of it that doesn't work. But in terms of crowning the Animal as the world champion at the end of the show, that part definitely works, which makes it better than some of the other matches in mediocre, but it's still in-ring not good enough for me to call it a good match or a good main event of Mania. It just doesn't quite get there. Then at number 26, we have Triple H versus Chris Jericho from WrestleMania 18. In ring, this is a good match. Story with Stephanie and the dog, and the fact that this main evented over Hogan and Rock was not a good choice. Oh, I'm tossed up between good and mediocre because it's kind of both. Just because of how much people didn't care, I think I'm still going to put this in mediocre. It is almost a good match, and the reason why it's above the Batista match is because in an in-ring perspective, it is better. Definitely better in-ring in terms of what they did as a wrestling match. But again, it being the main event over Hogan Rock is really what kills the match, unfortunately. And that is a massive issue with it. But it's almost a good match. It's very close to being it, but it just doesn't scrape through. Now we can finally move on to things that I would consider to be good matches. So we start with WrestleMania 22. We have John Cena versus Triple H. I think that in-ring wise, this is decent. Both men put in what they could on the night. They did a decent job. I think the reason why I put this in good is because of how white hot the crowd was. I think Chicago really elevates this main event. Admittedly, they're not cheering for the right guy that the WWE wanted them to, because they were cheering for Triple H and booing Cena. which was opposite to the story they were trying to tell, which does hang over the match. But I think as a piece of entertainment, it still makes it a very entertaining watch. And unlike stuff like Reigns versus Triple H from years later, it doesn't tank the match because people still cared. There was a lot of passion behind this 22 match as opposed to the 32 match. And that it makes a huge difference, really, between Cena versus Triple H and Reigns versus Triple H, which makes this one just slip into good, whereas the Reigns one is one of the worst ones. Yeah, passion from the crowd is very important as opposed to ambivalence or discontent. It's certainly not one of my favorites, but I think it just slips into good purely because of how hot the crowd was. They did a huge thing with this. Next, we have WrestleMania 3, which is my 24th choice, Hulk Hogan versus Andre the Giant. This is about as kind to this match as I can get from a critical perspective, because in ring, obviously, it's not a good match from a wrestling perspective. But it is very iconic. It uses the elements of sports entertainment and hype and drama and crowd response to its best advantage. It also has very strong commentary as well from Gorilla Monsoon and Jesse the Body Ventura. Obviously, the body slam is iconic. And the build-up is amazing to the match, with Andre's undefeated streak and Hogan's sort of reign that had lasted so many years. Clash of the Titans feel, yeah, I think the iconography of this match pushes it up to good, even if the wrestling itself is very limited. I think it has its place, really. It has its place in wrestling, but I can't put it any higher because it's just... the in-ring stuff just isn't up to scratch compared to the standard that you expect. At number 23, I have from WrestleMania 28, The Rock versus John Cena, the first match from Miami. This was the actual once-in-a-lifetime match that should have stayed once-in-a-lifetime. It has some of the similar iconography you can expect from a match like Hogan-Andre, but this one had a lot more going for it in ring, and the crowd was really hot. The hype packages were great. The musical performances before the entrances added a lot to the hype. This was a very mainstream worthy match. A lot of people tuned in to see this one. And The Rock does get gassed, but they push through. It isn't one of my favorite kinds of matches. This kind of, these two guys together and the way that they did the match is not my favorite kind of story, but there are certainly some great elements. Probably my favorite being the finish, the way that Cena gets cocky, tries to do the people's elbow and gets rock bottomed and loses. And you get that iconic shot of Cena sitting on the stage as he's lost the match. Yeah, a good main event. Worthy of that WrestleMania that year. Even though CM Punk wished he was in the main event instead. Number 22, we have a very divisive match. One that gets a lot of slander these days. From WrestleMania 12. We have the Iron Man match between Brett and Shawn. This is a very mixed bag of a match. It is too long. The parts of the match that are, in the building up phases, that it's not structured in the right way. And a lot of backstage politics is the reason why it's like that, because Brett and Shawn didn't respect each other and they couldn't bear to lose multiple falls to each other, which hurts the match. That being said, when this match gets really good, especially towards the end, it's fucking legendary and some of the best WrestleMania main events has been. So whilst this does veer from being bad because of the length and the pacing and the structure, when the match gets to its apex, it is GOAT tier. I think that really balances it out at good for me. But yeah, it is a very mixed bag of a match. I think it just sort of lands around here. I think this is one that's very interchangeable depending on your tolerance for the 60-minute structure and the lack of falls. Because as great as Brett and Shawn are in the ring, if they don't tell a story with enough variety in it and enough drama, not even they can make 60 minutes work. And there's been a lot of Iron Man matches since that have outdone this. So yeah, that's why it's at my number 22. At number 21, we have Steve Austin versus The Rock from WrestleMania 15. Where is it? Here it is, 1999. This is also in the good tier. This is the overbooked Vince Russo main event of WrestleMania. But these two guys are so good at what they do, and they were so popular at the time that it elevates it massively, because they were the two top guys in 1999. the whole thing with Vince. It is, as I said, overbooked, a bit of a brawl. Austin doesn't get to come up with his jacket, which is annoying. But it is a good main event. Probably the weakest of their matches. I think even the Backlash match 1 month later was better than this, which does hold it down a little bit, but the good stuff from this match is enough to elevate it to being a good match. It was one that it kind of saved WrestleMania 15 in a way, because the rest of that show is a bit shit, but that main event is quite fun. So yeah, I'm going to put Austin versus Rock from 15-21. At number 20, we have Becky Lynch versus Ronda Rousey versus Charlotte Flair from WrestleMania 35. And this one, ooh, I'm going to put this in good. I was thinking great because of how the crowning of Becky Lynch was such a great moment for fans, but the issue is the booking of the match, the finish being botched, and also the fact that WrestleMania 35 was just way too long, that everyone was so tired by the time this match came around that they couldn't get as excited as they should have. It was nice to have the woman in the main event for the first time, but it's just issues with the length of the show and Ronda Rousey not wanting to tap out. There are certainly good elements of the match, but as a triple threat, it doesn't quite hit the way it really should. But it's a good match. Just held slightly below great, I think, just by a few factors, unfortunately. Then at number 19 is a match that I was really tossing up on where to place because it's so hinging on one specific thing. But I'm still going to stick with my guns. I'm going to put it in great. It is WrestleMania 39, Roman Reigns versus Cody Rhodes. I think if you ignore the last 60 seconds, this is a GOAT tier match. In ring, these guys have amazing chemistry. The wrestling itself was amazing. All of the performances, the entrances, everything about it was top tier. Especially with Paul Heyman there as well. The whole thing was just beautiful. And then, because people will say, well, you're saying this because Cody lost. It's not just about Cody losing that holds this back match. It's how he lost. It's how lazy the Solo Sikoa interference was, because it's the exact same finish from Clash at the Castle, just done again. And I just think there is a way you could have had Cody lose this match and not have it hurt the match so much. And unfortunately, the last 60 seconds of the match really does hurt it a lot. I was very sour at the end of the match, but apart from the ending, everything else in the match was brilliant. So I'm going to put it in the great tier. At number 18, we have a very fun match. From WrestleMania 38, Night 1, we have Kevin Owens versus Stone Cold Steve Austin. Yeah, this is so much fun. I mean, Steve Austin is definitely older now, can't do as much in the ring, but it was a fun brawl of two lads going at it. The promo with the KO show beforehand was a lot of fun. The Texas crowd was hot. Yeah, it was just a fun boys brawl. Great fun, really. Just a feel-good match. And just seeing Steve Austin one more time go at it in Texas and drink the beers, and Kevin Owens did such a great job of, having that match with Austin. Just a great time. Speaking of Steve Austin, number 17 is Steve Austin versus Shawn Michaels from WrestleMania 14. In ring, this is held back slightly because both men had injuries. The previous year's SummerSlam, Owen Hart tombstone Stone Cold, so his neck broke and he had to slightly change his in-ring style, so there was a less technical prowess to his style and more of a brawling style. The other problem is that Shawn Michaels broke his back at Royal Rumble, and he was wincing throughout the whole match, so they couldn't give their best effort like they could have, say, a year prior. But that being said, they still put on a really good match in ring, and then the match itself is elevated even more by the occasion, by Mike Tyson being there, by the sort of the arrival of the Attitude Era and the Austin world title match, and sort of Austin winning his first WWF title with Jim Ross on commentary, and the DX entrance, and just the whole presentation made it feel so big time, and it was a huge deal. And wrestling was in just such a great place, at the start of the Attitude Era, with Austin finally winning the gold. And it was a happy time, very happy time, and this match is great because of that. good in ring, but elevated to great by the occasion. Then at 16, we have a match that I think it gets a little bit overlooked these days. We have Hulk Hogan versus Randy Savage from WrestleMania 5. Now, it's make no bones about it that Hogan is not the greatest in-ring technician. Savage is. He's great. But the reason why this match is so high and why I consider it to be a great match is because of the story, the mega powers exploding, and the whole narrative of that 18-month build that they did to this match, and the psychology behind the match, the story they told, the dynamics between the two of them. I think it really works well to construct a great story. Sometimes you can have a great story even if you have, let's say Hulk Hogan's not the greatest technician in the world, but what he can do is he can really invest a crowd, especially around this time in the 80s, really invest a crowd into what he's doing, who he's facing. As a Savage fan, it's probably not my favorite thing in the world to have him lose to Hogan, but having said that, it makes sense for the story they were telling. And yeah, I think Randy Savage really pulled out an amazing performance in this main event, and it's great because of that whole Mega Powers thing. Speaking of Hogan, another one I'm going to put in the great, which is so much better than it had any right to be, is Hulk Hogan versus the Ultimate Warrior from WrestleMania 6, which is my number 15 choice. Again, you got two guys not known for their in-ring prowess necessarily, Hogan not so much, and then Ultimate Warrior really not known for his in-ring prowess, but what makes this match great is the booking, the agent. I believe, unless I'm mistaken, I think it was Pat Patterson who booked this match as an agent. You know, he really constructed it, and it utilized these two guys to every ability that they have to make this two of the same. It's like two of the same kind of Titan clashing together and the passing of the torch to the Ultimate Warrior. It is a match where you take two guys who could have had an absolute stinker and makes it into the best possible match it could have been for 1990 WWF. It just works for what it is. It just really works for what it's trying to do. Now we move on to number 14 from WrestleMania 23. We have John Cena versus Shawn Michaels. I'm going to put this in Legendary. I think this is by far Cena's best Mania match, not including the video essay that was the Firefly Funhouse. But we're talking about wrestling. This is Cena's best Mania moment. No surprise given that it's against Shawn Michaels. This really was epic. It had the iconic moments like the moonsault through the table, the pile driver on the stairs, and Cena really bringing every bit of strength he can with that STF. I know that Shawn Michaels did have a bit of beef with Cena because there was a bit of a lack of selling, and that's probably the only thing about this match that does hold it slightly back, is that there was a few moments where Cena could have sold the moves a bit more. But overall, this is a classic between two guys who have great chemistry, and they are so different in their in-ring styles that they kind of complement each other in a way. And yeah, Shawn Michaels is one of the GOATs in the ring, and he helped Cena bring up his A game for this match. And remember, to be fair, in 2007, Cena really did do some of his best work in ring. He was having a good run, really getting those reps in as champion. So yeah, Cena versus Michael slips into Legendary at WrestleMania 23. Number 13, we have from WrestleMania 37, Night 2, the triple threat match. We have Roman Reigns versus Edge versus Daniel Bryan. This match fucking rolls. This coming out of the pandemic, you have a quarter full stadium, at least there were fans there. But with Daniel Bryan and Edge trying to, respectively use their abilities to try and upset the Tribal Chief, but inevitably landing on the Tribal Chief, double stacking them to retain his title in strong fashion. Yeah, this was awesome. I think the only thing I would potentially change is I wish that Reigns came out to his newer theme, and this was where he debuted at WrestleMania, but I guess they just wanted to do it on SmackDown instead. I don't know why, but that's what they chose. But yeah, this is a kick-ass match. So much fun. Great time. Speaking of triple threats featuring Daniel Bryan, number 12 is from WrestleMania 30. We have Daniel Bryan versus Randy Orton versus Batista. The Yes Movement coming to a head at WrestleMania 30. Daniel Bryan overcomes Evolution and the Authority to win the undisputed WWE and World Heavyweight Championship. It's just a really feel-good moment. I think maybe in ring, this one is a little bit messier than the triple threat I just talked about, but the occasion and the moment was so electric and the crowd was so into the match that it really did just elevate this to legendary status. And man, that moment where Randy Orton's back goes on the monitor is disgusting. But yeah, I remember watching this match, and it's a very feel-good ending to Mania 30. Maybe not the greatest match of all time necessarily, because of just in-ring, I think there's some slight things about it that could have been done a bit better. Could have been a little bit less sloppy, but that being said, still a legendary match because of the occasion and the story. Number 11 from WrestleMania 19, we have Brock Lesnar versus Kurt Angle. This could have been a GOAT match. There's one thing holding it back, and that's the botched shooting star press where Brock concussed himself. Kurt also had a broken neck, and he fought through it somehow. This is an amateur wrestling boys clinic match. This is physical. It has all the sports elements you could want. And yeah, it's just the two best pure athletes in WWE going at it. And Brock is crowned at WrestleMania, beating Kurt Angle for the title. Yeah, as I said, this would be one of the GOAT matches, but I just think the botched shooting star press just kind of holds it back slightly. But it's still a legendary main event. Great stuff. Just missing out on the top 10. Then at number 10, we have The Rock and Roman Reigns versus Cody Rhodes and Seth Rollins from WrestleMania 40, Night 1. This match just happened over the weekend. This was awesome. The Rock actually showed out and did so many great things in the ring and outside the ring. It's 45 minutes long. It's massively long, but unlike the Iron Man match, it doesn't feel like it's overstaying its welcome. It actually earns all of its minutes. And yeah, the action was awesome. The drama was awesome. All these guys pulled throughout an amazing match. And the stories between all of them and the hype towards the match was amazing. And it set up night 2 well. The only thing that really holds it down for me is there's a few botches, unfortunately, especially with the Cody cutters. They just couldn't quite connect properly. Just a few mistiming moments. But apart from that, it's such a fun tag team match. Legendary stuff. That's why it's my number 10. And then at number 9, we have from WrestleMania 36, Night 1. Unlike the other main event, which was depressing to watch, this one was a lot of fun. We have Undertaker versus AJ Styles in the Boneyard match. I can't put it in GOAT tier because it's not really wrestling. There's no ring. It doesn't have the things that a match usually has. It's just a little bit too outside the box. But for what it is, the horror movie that it is, to send off the Undertaker, and with AJ Styles and the OC involved, this is so much fun. And with COVID going down, they actually use the circumstances to their advantage. This doesn't have the downside of the other main event of that year. It doesn't have the zero fans thing. Doesn't hurt this one because it's more like a film, like a short film fight in a setting. And yeah, just a legendary moment of Taker. AJ thinks he's buried the Undertaker, then he appears behind him, and then AJ gets buried alive, and Taker rides off into the sunset. It's just a perfect way to end the Undertaker's career and do it justice. So yeah, love this one. Then after that, we have number 8 from WrestleMania 37, Night 1. We have Bianca Belair versus Sasha Banks for the SmackDown Women's Championship. Again, this is coming out like the other 37 main event, coming out of COVID, only a quarter full stadium, but man, this match was great. This was so great. Also to see 2 black women main event WrestleMania, huge moment, but you can see both of them very emotional, but yeah, this match was awesome. Great in-ring action, iconic moments. Sasha made Bianca a star that night. The whole, suicide dive into Gorilla's press, throwing over the ropes, the hair whip, all of the work that Sasha did with the bank statement, all of that. Very tight match, very well structured, and definitely worthy of Night 1 main event that year. It was awesome. It was great to see. Genuinely loved this match. Loved this match to pieces. Just a slight notch below GOAT, though. Just a slight notch. Maybe it's just because it's a little bit too short for what it could be. But no real complaints. Legendary stuff. Then we have The Undertaker versus Edge from WrestleMania 24 at number 7. Once again, I'm going to put this in Legendary, just a slight inch below GOAT tier. This match is awesome. It rules. All the in-ring action's great. The story between these two, going back to the previous year when Edge cashed in Money in the Bank leading up to this match. The whole story about the Hell's Gate and La Familia and the Edgeheads, all of that factoring in with Teddy Long as well. It was so great to have, you know, Edge with the champion going against Undertaker's streak. Great, well-worked match. Just such a great main event to have at the end of 24. Lovely stuff. Not too much to say, and also has the legendary moment of Charles Robinson running to the ring. Then, after that, at number 6, this is where we get to the big boys. I think... I'm really tossing up whether or not the next one belongs in GOAT or not. You know what? Screw it. Let's go. Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn versus the Usos from WrestleMania 39 Night 1 is my number 6, and it's my first GOAT on this list. Yeah, this fucking ruled. Everything about it. The whole Bloodline storyline leading up to this Mania was some of the best stuff they've ever done. Sami Zayn was so over, and the whole story of him and Kevin Owens going all the way back to Ring of Honor and NXT leading up to this moment, it's poetry, and they executed this match as great as they could have. And that ending, that feel-good ending was just euphoric. It was a euphoric moment, and one that I think everyone will remember forever. So yeah, Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens versus the Usos from 39 Night 1 belongs in the GOAT tier for me. Just an unbelievable match. Number 5. Oh boy, this match was one that had some pretty shocking build up to it, and a lot of people expected this to go very poorly. Oh, I just realized I've done something wrong here. I've put the wrong Cody Roman match in great. It's supposed to be this one, because that's 39 there. I'll move the 40 match when I get to it. Regardless, number 5 from WrestleMania 31, we have Brock Lesnar versus Roman Reigns and the heist of the century from Seth Rollins. Oh boy, I remember when I watched this live, I badly wanted Roman to lose, badly wanted Brock to win, but there was these rumors going around that Brock was going back to the UFC and his contract had expired. And I think there was some reality to that. And it was so interesting to go in being like, the result of this match is such a huge deal, because the most obvious result being Reigns winning is the one that no one wants. They pulled off a fucking physical bastard of a match. These two guys ripped the absolute shit out of each other. This was the debut of Suplex City, bitch, that line. Brock put an absolute pummeling on Roman Reigns. And then, right at the climax of the match, Seth Rollins cashes in Money in the Bank, pins Roman Reigns, and wins the title. I cannot express how euphoric I was at the end of that. Genuinely unbelievable. One of my favorite moments being a wrestling fan. That whole match and that cash-in. GOAT tier stuff. Number 4. This one's a bit tough because of hindsight. But I'm still going to put it in GOAT tier and separate art from the artist, with Chris Benoit versus Triple H versus Shawn Michaels from WrestleMania 20. Yes, obviously since 2007 this match has been damaged by Benoit's tragedy, but in 2004 this deserved every bit of praise it got. This match is so good. It is one of the best triple threat matches in the history of wrestling. The crowning of Benoit after the Triple H's reign of terror, with Shawn Michaels involved in the match, which never hurts. At the 20th WrestleMania in Madison Square Garden, you have the wrestler's wrestler for the fans, and to have that moment with Benoit holding the world title and his best friend Eddie holding the WWE title at the end of the show is just... it's unparalleled, and it's sad that we can't really reflect on it the same way after what happened. But as a match, it deserves GOAT tier. Genuinely incredible match. Then at number 3, I'm biased a bit for this one, but I think it still holds up because it was my first Mania I watched live. It is The Undertaker versus Shawn Michaels from WrestleMania 26. Career versus streak. They had the GOAT match the previous year, and this one had different stakes to it. Shawn's career was on the line. They went all out, and the whole finishing sequence of The Undertaker doesn't want to kill Shawn's career. He has too much respect for him. Shawn slaps him, forces him to do it with the jumping tombstone, and Shawn has to retire and the streak stays alive. It's just a perfect ending to Shawn's career. It's been damaged by Saudi Arabia since, but it's still so good. And in 2010, which I think is a really weak time for WWE, they delivered an unbelievable match in ring. And yeah, it's just a great story, great match, everything about it I just love. Number 2, the match I watched literally yesterday. Cody Rhodes versus Roman Reigns from WrestleMania 40 Night 2. Maybe it's recency bias. Maybe I'm being a little bit too kind to it because of, you know, the callbacks, the sequences, the cameos, the finishing the story, the occasion of it, the famous Reign of Reigns ending. But really, when you think about it, this is all the stars aligning all at once to climax at the same time. This match also in ring is amazing. These two guys, as I said in 39, these two guys have insane chemistry with each other. And just so euphoric to see Cody finish the story and win the title. I think it does everything it really needs to. It is kind of like WWE's Avengers Endgame match. The only thing I think I maybe would have preferred is I think if Steve Austin had been part of it, I think him facing off with The Rock, it would have added another layer onto it that they already did. But for me, the thing that with the story that really cements this match is the finish, because you have Rollins in the Shield gear reminiscent of 2014, lures Roman in. Roman hits him with a chair out of vengeance, and that costs him, allowing Cody to hit the triple crossroads and then win and then finish the story. And it's poetry, really, and it's genuinely an amazing match and amazing to end an amazing WrestleMania. And I'm so happy at how it went. But there is one match that for me is just the pinnacle of this industry. Not just the event itself, because I already would consider the event itself the GOAT Mania, but we also have the GOAT Mania main event. It's Steve Austin versus The Rock from WrestleMania 17. Yes, in ring, yeah, maybe there's other matches that do better things, especially within its same tier, but I just can't not put this at number 1. It is the match. It is the match. It is the peak of the Attitude Era. It is the peak of the GOATed Mania X7. It is the two biggest stars in the biggest match at the biggest show in the biggest time in wrestling, when they just bought WCW, the war was over, WWF was at its peak. I mean, you could argue they've had a even bigger peak now, but man, I cannot emphasize how hype this match is to have Austin in Texas. And some people don't like it. I actually think the heel turn is great. Maybe after the fact, the company didn't utilize it well business-wise because it didn't quite maintain the Austin level fan engagement in terms of, yeah, as I said, business-wise. But on the night, the Austin heel turn, using what he had to desperately to win the title from The Rock and siding with the devil, Vince McMahon. It is the ultimate WrestleMania main event from the GOAT Mania, from two of the GOAT guys in the ring, two biggest stars. What more could you want? That there is my ranking of all the WrestleMania main events. I hope you enjoyed. I bid you adieu, a good night, and a good bye bang.